Breaking news now. Putin sends a strong message of authority with the murder of Prigozhin. Russia's President Vladimir Putin was presiding over a televised ceremony commemorating the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II on a dark stage with dramatic red lighting as news of the presumed death of mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin broke on Wednesday. He paused for a moment of silence, surrounded by uniformed service members, as the slow ticking of a metronome could be heard in the background. Perhaps it was just a coincidence that the reported fiery death of the man who launched an armed rebellion in June occurred at the same time as the Russian president telegraphed the state's military might. However, it highlighted the dominant and powerful imagery that Putin seems more determined than ever to project 18 months into his full-scale invasion of Ukraine. It's possible that Prigozhin was brutally effective when he committed tens of thousands of his soldiers to the fight for Bakhmut in eastern Ukraine, snarling Ukrainian forces and making it difficult for Kyiv to launch a counteroffensive. His mercenary empire helped Russia exert influence in Africa and the Middle East, and his internet troll farm aided the Kremlin in interfering with the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Prigozhin's rebellion in June, however, threatened Putin's own grip on power. Following Wednesday's crash of Prigozhin's plane, the Kremlin appears to be sending the message that violating Putin's loyalty will result in severe consequences. A Moscow newspaper editor with ties to the Kremlin named Konstantin Remchikov said, "Everyone's afraid," in response to Wednesday's plane crash, which Western officials believe was caused by an explosion on board. All of a sudden, people believe that anything is feasible. According to Moscow political analyst Mikhail Vinogradov, this is the first time someone so central to Russia's ruling establishment has been killed in what is believed to be a state-sponsored assassination. According to Vinogradov, this is a rather harsh precedent, and it seems the Kremlin isn't trying to change people's minds about whether or not it approved of Prigozhin's death. After all, it would send a devastating signal of Putin's loss of control if members of the ruling elite concluded that one of the Putin system's most powerful players had been killed against the Kremlin's wishes. On Friday, Dmitry Peskov, the Kremlin spokesman, called the allegations made by foreign officials that the Kremlin was responsible for Prigozhin's death an absolute lie. More shocking than the crash of Prigozhin's private jet was the fact that he managed to stay alive for 2 months after staging his rebellion. On June 24, as Prigozhin's forces marched on Moscow and had taken control of a city of 1 million people in Russia's southwest, Putin addressed the nation and accused the warlord of betrayal. Putin has previously stated that betrayal is the only sin that can never be forgotten. Some Russians took Putin's apparent agreement to let Prigozhin escape to Belarus as a sign that he had lost control of the situation. Photos of Prigozhin meeting with African officials at Putin's high-profile summit with African leaders in St. Petersburg in July heightened this perception. After he forgave Prigozhin, it was understood by those around him as weakness, said Alexei Venediktov, who ran the liberal Echo of Moscow radio station before the Kremlin shut it down last year. After the chaos of the rebellion, Venediktov said in an interview on Thursday in Moscow that Putin's dominance in Russian politics had been bolstered by Prigozhin's apparent death. Venediktov continued by saying that now, Putin has shown his elite that any betrayal will be found out. American officials are becoming more convinced that Prigozhin was killed in the crash on Wednesday and that Putin ordered his murder. Even if Putin did not personally order the attack, the fact that Prigozhin died violently after Putin publicly condemned him is significant in terms of the power dynamics within Russia's ruling elite. He called him a traitor, Remchikov reported. As a result, and that was enough for everyone to see that this person is no longer invulnerable. After remaining silent for 24 hours, Putin finally addressed the plane crash on Thursday, calling Prigozhin a talented man, with a complicated fate. Putin said that he had known Prigozhin since the early 1990s and, for the first time, admitted that he had asked Prigozhin to do things for him. He made some major mistakes in his life, but he also accomplished some important goals, both for himself and, when I inquired, for our common cause, as Putin put it. Prigozhin's reputation for operating covertly in Putin's interest while providing the Kremlin with plausible deniability had preceded him. His troops were stationed in eastern Ukraine in 2014, when Putin was fanning a separatist war there while denying any involvement on his part. In 2016, Prigozhin's troll farm on the internet interfered in American politics as part of the Kremlin's effort to help Donald Trump win the presidency. Putin's brief eulogy for Prigozhin omitted the fact that by betraying the Russian president after so many years of service, Prigozhin may have sealed his own fate. Alexei Dyamin, another longtime Putin confidant, issued a statement on Friday that provided some clarity. Prigozhin was known by Dyamin, Putin's former bodyguard and current governor of a region south of Moscow, as a true patriot, a decisive and fearless man. He expressed his sorrow for the victims of the crash and for all Wagner fighters who had lost their lives in Ukraine. They weren't snitches, after all. The implication seems to be that Prigozhin's soldiers and commanders are dependable, honorable men. It did, however, suggest that Prigozhin may have deserved death if, as Putin claimed, he was a traitor. The Kremlin faces challenges of its own in the wake of Prigozhin's death. After months of fighting for the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut, Wagner earned a reputation in Ukraine as one of Russia's most effective and brutal fighting forces. Wagner's ability to maintain a presence in Africa, where Prigozhin established a mercenary empire supporting Moscow-aligned autocrats in countries like Mali and the Central African Republic, is uncertain. Russian officials have confirmed that Prigozhin and Wagner's top military commander, Dmitry Utkin, were both on the doomed flight. Putin's former speechwriter and current political consultant in Israel, Abbas Galyamov, claimed that the Kremlin was behind the plane crash and that Putin's decision to risk killing Prigozhin as a signal of deterrence revealed his anxiety about losing power. Galyamov stated on social media that, to send this signal, Putin decided to risk a bunch of projects. This is significant because it reveals his current focus, internal consolidation rather than global expansion. Putin has also made it clear for a long time that he considers the interests of the Russian state and his own to be inseparable. Professor of politics at the European University of St. Petersburg Grigory Golosev said, he believes that if something is important for keeping him in power, then all other concerns are secondary. Russia's lower house chair Vyacheslav Volodin summed up this outlook earlier this year. As long as there is Putin, there is Russia.